Hi guys, my name is Jordan, and today we're going to be continuing our journey through the 1900s, more specifically 1900 to 1940. Today we're moving into 1920, where we're going to be talking about one of my personal favorites, which is Surrealism. So it's a little bit of a complex subject, so we're going to try and really boil it down and get to the root of what makes it unique from all the other forms of art. So first off, Surrealism is the idea of merging the awake and the dream world and creating something that exists in between both. So this idea of merging the awake and the dream world and having something really unique is why I like this subject so much. So getting a little bit deeper into that, it's really best known for its juxtaposition or comparing of two really opposite things of uncommon imagery, which would be something really odd and not normal, and unnerving illogical scenes. So again, bit of a handful, bit of a mouthful. Unnerving and illogical really means something that when you look at it, it makes you a little bit uncomfortable. If we go back to our expressionist lesson, that kind of melds in with this one, talking about something that's really unnerving to kind of try and convey your emotions, kind of express yourself. The big thing with Surrealism is having paintings and drawings in almost photorealistic detail. And photorealistic detail means having something that is very, very, very realistic. Like you could reach out and grab it, that level of realistic. Now, when it comes to this project, I don't expect any of you to have that sort of accuracy in any slight. Not many people do. It's a very hard thing to come up with, but that's all right. We're going to be focusing more on the idea. Now, before we do move on to that project, I'm going to be talking about probably the most prominent or well-known surrealist artist of the time, which was Salvador Dali. Now, Salvador Dali was a very interesting man who was really fascinated with the idea of surrealism and really wanted to play with the idea of taking everyday objects and making them resemble people or faces. A really good example of that is the one titled Age, which is right here. And as you can see, by using different rock formations and objects, he creates the illusion of seeing faces where there really aren't any. Now, this is a really complex thing to do, and it takes a lot of time to figure out what objects you want to use for your faces. And it can be really time-consuming, but the end result is something that's really, really cool, and I think is definitely something that you could hang up and show a lot of people. Something else that more focuses on the abstract or kind of surreal, I guess you could say, illogical parts of it, which would be elephants. Now, elephants is really interesting because the only difference between them and, well, regular elephants is they're incredibly long. Their legs are very, very long and really stilted. And he liked playing with this idea of really tall elephants because he just found it to be incredibly uncomfortable. If you saw a tall elephant, you'd be kind of a little bit scared, as would really anybody. Another example of something that has to do more with the dream state is his work titled The Persistence of Memory. Now, The Persistence of Memory is probably his most well-known piece. It's this one here, of course. Now, that includes the drooping clocks, which is what Salvador Dali is best known for. And The Persistence of Memory was Salvador trying to show the idea of time and what we know kind of melding together when looking back on our memories. If I try to look back to when I was really young, everything gets really melded. It gets mushed together because our brains can't really think back that far. And even if they do, sometimes certain details are mixed up and certain things are just not the way they should be, which is what the persistence of memory was really trying to illustrate. A few more examples, however, of creating images from different objects would be, let's see, there's Face and Fruit, which is where you're taking a face and forming it out of different objects in the background, which seems to be on like a tablecloth. And there's also The Invisible Lion and Horse. Now, the invisible line and horse, I think, is like a really prime example of taking objects and making them look like animals. The only thing is, this was taken to the extreme with this version and is really, really hard to comprehend. It's a very, you can look at it for just probably an hour or more and still keep seeing something different every time you look at it. It's a very hard thing to comprehend. And by no means do I expect anybody here to be at this level. I mean, I'm not at this level by any means, but it's this concept that we really want to focus on, you know? The idea of taking objects or shapes on their own and then forming some sort of object or creature with them when looking at it from a greater perspective. So for our project for today, we are going, using the handout of course, we are going to create our own really trippy surreal art. So what that means is we're going to be looking online for different surreal paintings and surreal artists. Salvador Dali is of course the most famous example, and if you'd like to see more, feel free to look him up. He's a really interesting artist. He's a personal favorite of mine. And then after that, we're going to really try to analyze and look at what makes the painting so surreal. You know, what makes them so uncomfortable to look at. So what do Salvador Dali and other artists do to make the art so unsettling? You know, do they make the everyday objects look like faces and people? Do they take a normal concept and just turn it on its head, or do they do something completely out of left field and play with your perception of everything? Do they make you kind of question what you're even looking at? So really figuring out what makes these art pieces so drastically and so incredibly different from everything else that you've probably seen when it comes to art. So using the handout, you're going to want to write down 3 different objects and 3 different animals that you can think of, right? So this doesn't have to be something really obscure or out there. Like, you don't have to write down like an aardvark or an anteater. You could be like a dog, a cat, you know, a monkey, something like that, whatever you'd like. And then 3 different objects that just off the top of your head. And then after that, what you're going to do is draw or color a picture where an animal is made from the objects that you wrote. So that means looking through your list of the animals that you wrote and picking one that you want to make using your other objects. Now this could be something as simple as maybe showing a monkey face inside of a pear, just where the cutouts of the pear are, or it could be something a lot more complicated that you want to try and do. This isn't by any means, an art competition. This is purely for the sake of playing with the concept and trying to really understand what surrealism is. And so, of course, that means a lot of experimentation and playing around with the handout. If you want to do it a few different times to try something different, then feel free. So once you do that and you draw the animal made out of objects, go ahead and show it off to your friends and family. Can they see the animal that you made? What do they think would be cool to make out of objects themselves? Do they have any really cool ideas? On top of that, if they've never heard of Salvador Dali or any of these paintings that we've seen today, go ahead and show them off if you really enjoy them and you really like the idea. My personal favorite is elephants. I just like how funny it looks. Like, that's just great. That's just great. I love it. But yeah, just show them different forms of surrealism and see what they think. So to extend your journey, what you could do is use a journal to write down what happened in your dreams. So once you wake up, if you want to record something weird or wacky that happened while you were asleep, you can go ahead and do that and then try and paint it into surreal style. So if you had a really strange dream, it might be pretty easy. Now if you had a pretty normal dream, it might be a little bit more difficult. But try picking out the ones that you think would look the most interesting and literally merge your dream in the real world. So that concludes our lesson for today. I hope everybody had an easy time working their way through the concept. I'm sure it can be very hard to decipher sometimes, and that's completely understandable. It's a lot of new concepts. But just do your best to really understand what we talked about here today, and if you need any more help, there are going to be links talking about, of course, Salvador Dali and a more in-depth look at what surrealism really means if you're interested in that. If you want to submit your art to ArcSphere Interactive, there will be the correct hashtags at the bottom of the handouts. and contact information for the email at Arts Peer Interactive. It's been good speaking with you, and I hope to see you in the next lesson.